Welcome to Bat Therapy, psychology of Batman, superheroes, and other comic book characters. Be a fly on the wall or a bat in the cave, listening in on a friendship built out of a love for talking Batman, comics, and the everyday struggle to achieve mental health and happiness.
We are your hosts, clinical psychologist Dr. Emilia Brown and educator and comic aficionado Colleen Hopkins. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube and social media and find our Patreon at patreon.com/battherapy.
This podcast is about providing education and understanding and is not a replacement for mental health treatment or support. If you're needing help, go to bat-therapy.com for resources.
All right, so I am super excited because we're doing another big crossover episode of Bat Therapy. First, we have Sam here with us from Team JVS. I've known him since I was 5 years old. We've always watched movies and TV shows together since then. And so I'm super excited about this. And then, of course, next to me, for the first time, I have my wife joining me on Bat Therapy. And she's the one that got me into Avatar, and it felt wrong to not have her up here because she is a wiki all on her own when it comes to all things Avatar. She has all the comic books, she has the TV show, like Legend of Korra, she has all of it. And so
novels.
Novels. They're like graphic novels.
No, novels.
Oh, there's books. See? Yeah.
Wow. All right.
I didn't know that.
Right. See? And
so on the scale here, we have Emilia, who knew nothing before the show. We have Sam and Keeden, who you guys watched the animated show, right? And knew that kind of stuff. And then there's Colleen, who apparently went to school for Avatar.
Might actually be the Avatar.
Sweet. Okay.
Yeah. And so it was one of those things. I remember talking to her and telling her that like we're gonna cover Avatar, and she was like, without me, like kind of spun the wedding ring around, like. Really?
A little flicks a little bit. Make sure I adjust
is that a fact? And I was like, yeah.
In her
He's
defense,
self-proclaimed expert every time on this podcast.
Yeah.
So look, in her defense, in her defense, I was like, I have this faint memory, and I went down the Facebook, rabbit hole, and I found a Halloween costume where Colleen was Katara. So and that was what, 10, 12 years ago? So she earned her spot.
It was
wow.
Yeah, that was one of the first cosplays that I did at one of the first cons I went to.
Oh, it was a con. Okay.
Well, I've worn it a couple times.
I love it so much.
And so, it's one. Yeah, and so I'm super excited. So, first things first. I'll go around. I wanted to ask you first, Emilia, because this is your first time in the universe. Did you like it? Did you enjoy it?
I did. So, first episode was okay. Not something that I would necessarily be like, oh yeah, let me watch the whole thing. Just get to episode 2. Yes. So, and I've heard that from everybody, not just people new to it like me. But I feel like it found its footing better. But yeah, it's got great character development. You really get enthralled with the different characters. It does that really cool thing where you go into the background. And so characters you really find super annoying, characters I couldn't stand, then became my favorite by the end. And I love that. I love when you make me love the people I hated. So
definitely.
I can't wait to hear who that is.
Yeah. I know exactly what she's talking about.
Yeah, Sam
got like a little scar on his eye.
Yeah. So I actually really, really enjoyed it. And if you didn't watch the animated series and don't know anything, I definitely encourage you to check it out. The acting is phenomenal and the stories are great.
Yes. What about you, Sam? How did you like it?
I really enjoyed it. I had the option of being able to check it out like the first episode a month ago. I felt like the pilot, even when I watched it, it was completely unfinished. Like the VFX wasn't even there. But I felt like the bones were there. I was like, the framing is there to be something really good. Yeah. I just felt like the first episode, I felt like they recorded that pilot very early on because everybody kind of seemed like they were not phoning it in, but it was like a nervousness there.
Yeah.
And as each episode went on, like by the time I got to episode 4, I was like, I'm in love. Like
Yeah.
I love this adaptation interpretation of these characters in a live action format, because we've never really truly had that. Like, you taking book 1 and condensing it down to an hour and 30 minutes, you cannot consider that anything close to what we got here. So
we don't
personally for me, I'm not even going to utter the name or the director, but
M. Night Shyamalan did a live action Avatar: The Last Airbender movie.
There we go.
And I've never seen it.
No.
And apparently a lot of people don't want to admit that it's really good.
Yeah,
that's what I hear.
The only thing you need to do is watch the YouTube movie Sins. That's all you need to see of that movie.
I cannot wait.
No,
I cannot
no.
wait for Keeden to sleep on the couch tonight. It's so exciting for me.
No. Well, it's M. Night Shyamalan. He's known for his twists, and the twist was the movie was horrible. That was the big twist.
You should do. I'm not gonna plug you guys if y'all got a Patreon, but if you do have a Patreon, you guys should have them do a Mystery Science Theater. Have Keeden watch it. And a full watch party, and just have him watch it.
So we do bat screenings. We do bat screenings.
We do now have a Patreon. So
why are you doing this to me, Sam?
I'm gonna do it. Let's do it. All right.
Because of the entertainment.
This is gonna be.
I'm trying to sell it. Okay.
A lot of
just have me next to him going.
Coming.
Oh God, yes.
But yeah, I really did enjoy it, and I think by the end of it, I was like, getting emotionally invested in it. But I think the other thing is, a lot of people don't realize, when I go back to book 1, like, it was kind of like really comical. I really didn't get my footing until much later. I wanted to continue to see where it went, but it wasn't until, like, honestly season 2 or going into that I really became truly a fan and invested. The first season, I was like, oh, this is really cute. This is really dope. I didn't think it was going to take these serious tones and shifts the way that it went, and it made it iconic as a legendary series. But that's just my
and that's for the cartoon, right?
Yes, animated. Yeah,
gotcha. And see, all right, so I will say I really, really liked it. Colleen,
I liked it. It's okay. Agreed, though. The first episode, no.
First episode was bad. I wasn't crazy about the first episode. It was a lot of surface level. Whole lot of surface level. Their costumes were way too clean for them living outside. Yes. That was one thing that really irked me.
They do that in like everything, though.
It was really... But go ahead, sweetie.
Yeah, I think that when you watched it with me, you know, I do it the same way, like when I watch the Harry Potter movies. I love those movies, but I love the books. And I cannot help but compare them. So
that's fair.
As I'm watching, I'm going, well, they're not doing this. They're not doing that. How can you get this message across without this, and this, and this? And that's, I was really curious to hear what you thought, Emilia, because I really like the idea of knowing if the same message got across to someone who didn't watch the animated show.
And that is going to be a really interesting thing to see, because I mean, it's interesting because you had a series going in and recreating it into a series versus like if you have a book. I feel like you get more artistic license versus with this. I could see it being harder to accept potential differences too. So it'll be very interesting to see if we
not a lot. Like they cut a lot of things out, but they didn't add a lot. They changed it around a little bit, but they were definitely trying to cater to the audience that knew the old show.
Oh yeah. So many shot for shots from the animated one. And
so Bill and I actually had moments where we went, I bet that's in the original. Oh, bet that's in there's something like my cabbages, and we were like, that's gotta be in the original.
Oh yeah. Cabbage guy, he's there. And what's interesting is the actor that played him is the original voice actor that played his character in the cartoon.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so fun times there. And so I really love the setup for this universe. And the thing is, it really hones in on all of these characters in their own stories, because of course you have Aang, and honestly, spoiler alert, we're going to talk a lot about this show. So if you haven't watched it yet, just pause it here, keep the episode downloaded, watch the show, come back, and then listen to us. But come back. That's the most important thing. Come back, right? But yeah, so you have Aang, who has woken up after 100 years. All of the other airbenders are gone, and he's basically blaming himself for the world around him. And then you have Sokka, who doesn't know where his dad is. They lost their mom early on, and now he's responsible for protecting the entire village. His sister is basically in a world dominated seemingly by men, and she's like, no, this is the world that I belong in, whether y'all think so or not. Then on the other side, you have Zuko, who has been banished until he can find the Avatar. And I'm not gonna lie, and we said this, we said this when his dad told him to go find the Avatar. It felt like when the dad from Angels in the Outfield was like, we can be a family again when the Angels win the pennant. It was basically saying,
it's never gonna happen.
It's never gonna happen, right? Like, that's what it was. And Zuko didn't pick up on that, just like the kid from Angels in the Outfield, right? And so, he's like doing everything he can to find the Avatar. And then Uncle Iroh, his uncle, is like, he's still, of course, mourning the loss of his son and trying his best to just mentor Zuko through this world, because he knows that Zuko's dad is the worst.
Yeah, Uncle Iroh, also known as the only parental figure that's alive that doesn't suck.
Yes.
That's alive. You're right. You said the key word is still alive.
Yes. So I was going to go around, and I wanted to see, I'll start with you, Emilia. Out of who did you think was the most interesting character in this show?
So Team JVS has a review. Definitely check it out. Sam was nice enough to let me watch ahead of time, so I got to be like really cool with my friends. And so Sam already knows how I feel about stuff, but I absolutely love Zuko. I love prickly characters that seem like they don't care, and then you pick underneath the surface, and they've just had a bunch of trauma that has built this really thick outer layer. So I loved seeing how so at first I could barely tolerate him on screen. He was the most annoying teenager ever, and it was really realistic in the way that he was an annoying angsty teenager, but he's also the prince or whatever and has power sort of, and he just was very much a teenager, and it was very annoying. But then they show the layers underneath him, and they show the relationship with Iroh, who I just want to get a big teddy bear hug from. He's the best.
He's the best.
And you see all these things about Zuko that are actually really caring. And Iroh helps you to be able to see that about him, and he even Zuko becomes more of himself as time goes on. And I loved seeing that. It might be the therapist in me, I don't know, but I love just seeing those types of people be able to open up, and you see their vulnerabilities and they grow through them.
So happy to hear you say that.
Yeah?
So go. All right, you go ahead.
Well, without giving anything away for how the story goes, Zuko, he's the best.
I love him.
And I'm glad to hear that he came off that way, because he definitely was toned down.
Oh yeah,
he was way more angsty.
On another level.
Yes.
No, but like wow,
like Linkin Park concert angst.
He yelled everything. He yelled at Iroh. But his arc is amazing. And I'm just glad to hear that it came off that way. Because I said, I'm just worried about how people respond to it that didn't see the original show. Yeah. So,
hands down, my favorite.
Okay.
Him and Iroh.
Okay. And then Sam.
Oh man, why you gotta put me on the spot like that?
I let you
It's
go
hard.
last.
It's hard because the truth of the matter is, like,
Yeah.
Zuko and Iroh's relationship is so symbiotic that
Mhm.
they are my favorite. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, Uncle Iroh in and of himself, like, he's a whole pound. Like,
Yeah.
he's humble yet strong yet wise, like paternal. But there are scenes with them that are some of the best in this whole series. Like when Zuko went up to him, like after he just lost his son,
Oh,
and just
yeah.
humbly was right there with them.
Yes.
It emotionally connected with me. That whole episode in and of itself was amazing. But
Yeah.
the other side of that, if I had to pick another character duo, would be the monk and Aang. I think that every time they were
Yeah, so.
together, it worked perfectly. Like there's so much from Gyatso as a character that was still mentoring Aang, even though his absence wasn't there. You felt it. So every time they had scenes together, it's like the only thing Aang has close to a father that he really needs. And it's weird because those two relationships are the core. They feel like one character, but their arcs together are amazing. So that's why I said. So I'll say Zuko as a, if I had to pick one character, but Gyatso as a character that complemented Aang on different levels. But yeah.
Yeah. I will agree. I absolutely love Zuko. His story as like a banished prince is just right. It's so cool. It's so cool. And what's interesting is one of the big differences between the cartoon series and the live action is in the cartoon series, Zuko's just a villain for a lot longer. Like, I
Yep.
still like him because I'm like, where's this going? Like, he's clearly on screen way too long for it to stay like this, but he's a jerk. Like, he's a jerk. You do not like him. You don't, he's just like, I'm gonna catch the Avatar. And just breathing fire out of his nose and all that. Like, it's just a lot of anger. But at the same time, I feel like it resonates. It resonates because I feel all of us, first off, go through an angsty phase where we are not comfortable in our own bodies.
Yep.
He's literally, yeah.
I wore a paperclip necklace and had duct tape to hem my pants during that stage for me. Oh, and purple streaks in my hair.
And he's literally not comfortable in his own body. Every time he looks in the mirror, he sees where his father scarred him.
Oh God, that scene with his dad and what his dad just does. Oh, it's terrible.
He's a bastard. Like,
that was rough. Oh. Even seeing it translated was just rough.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's one of those things where I think he definitely has a lot of trauma. And at the same time, though, I think all the characters do, because of course, Aang was basically running away as all of his loved ones were getting wiped out, and wakes up 100 years later, which, like, just, oh my God, that tacks on everything, because basically the world that he lives in, he blames himself for.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, theoretically, although I don't know if the rules apply, so I'm waiting to see if there's a hidden avatar, second avatar somewhere. But
nope.
Because the thing is like, he also not only was he not there for his loved ones, but he was frozen.
Yeah.
So he was frozen, and therefore a new avatar could not be born.
Yep.
And then therefore people were also without an avatar for like 100 years. And so
they blamed him.
Yeah. And a lot of people blame him. And yeah, it's rough. So Aang might be my least favorite character.
Yeah.
But I think it's because he's, what, a 12 or however year
he's
old.
Young. Yeah.
He's a young kid, and other characters are young but not as young. And so they're at these developmental stages he's not quite at yet. And so I just think I find him the least interesting just because of that. But yeah, he has to deal with some rough stuff when he gets unfrozen.
Yeah. I wanted to actually talk about that because after watching the series, I don't think that I ever. So the animated series, he's so bubbly. Like, you feel for him, but he's so bubbly. So it
Mhm.
kind of is a good counterbalance. Like you never feel like too, depressed based on the situation that he went through. But in this, because it is live action, you're getting all the context, you're getting all the different people that are kind of throwing blame and shifting at him. And he's also having to process that on a live action level. Like he's feeling like I cannot do this. And he's also feeling levels of depression and trauma that he can't deal with. And so after watching the show, I felt for him more than anybody else on the show. I think this was the most I've ever actually felt for Aang as a character, because I was like, realistically, he didn't ask for this. Because the way they set it up, like he was still trying to figure out his footing. Like he felt like even just his airbending abilities, he didn't have capability of control. And so when you thrust all that onto losing everybody, he could easily slip to anger very easily or lash out, but he just doesn't. And so I feel more empathetic to this version of Aang that I've ever gotten because of the fact that he is a kid. I can't imagine how to be a real kid slash savior in a situation like that. So I think that I wanted you guys to kind of talk about, like, psychologically, what is he really dealing with all that, to be honest with you. Because I never really thought about it, honestly.
And I'll tell you too. Another thing that I feel like will make you more empathetic, or I guess sympathetic to it, is in the cartoon they didn't actually show the Fire Nation like destroying all the Airbenders, did
Fade
they?
on them jokers, not
That
running fade on them.
Yeah,
whole
they
thing
didn't
at
show
the
it.
beginning was told as a flashback kind of thing.
Oh, interesting.
He
Okay.
finds Monk Yatso, well, his remains. But that's it. It's just kind of,
That's the only part that.
yeah. Even in the very beginning, and he has a really upbeat attitude that somehow the Airbenders are still around somewhere.
Yeah.
Until he goes and sees all the destruction, which
Yeah.
I always found that moment really moving, because he does have that childlike attitude.
Yeah.
But then he has to be forced into the reality.
Yeah. So as Sam can attest, because he had to listen to me as I reacted in real time to watching the show, I kept being like, why isn't he getting trained over here? Why isn't he going to this master over here and getting trained? Why isn't he doing it? And he kept not utilizing the people around him that could really help and support him. And if anything, he very much relies on other people to do things. And Sam and others would nicely. It's funny because you think me as the, hey, I work with people and I do the whole psychology. You think I'd be the most patient one with the character, but I'm like, come on, because I think what I want for him, I want Gyatso back. Is he doesn't have that mentor. He gets his friends along the way, but they're also just trying to figure it out and help as best they can. And they're more kind of peer-to-peer kind of thing, and they're all just sorting through. He needs that parental piece. He needs that guidance, and he's going to all the old avatars and desperately trying to get them to fill that void, and they're all
worst.
they're interesting about it.
It wasn't bad.
And I mean, I guess the thing is I wish every time he came across someone that could teach him something, I was like, please just learn. You're there. Take the opportunity. But all this stuff happened to him, and so I think you see that he is this upbeat character, and I think that's part of it for me. Is he feels kind of like a cartoon. He feels animated in the show, but I think that that's purposeful, not just to align with the animated series, but because he's putting on a mask. And he's trying to stay lighthearted. He wants to keep himself and everyone going, but it's also keeping him from processing through what he needs to really get the mentorship and grow where he needs to.
Yeah, and that was a bit of a change onto the live action show. He was much more stable in understanding what he was supposed to do on the cartoon, and it was a very interesting change. I think everybody kind of looking at it it's not as fun is probably going to be the biggest complaint you have from people like me who've watched animated shows so much. And it felt less like a masking and more to go back on what Sam said about Monkiatsu. They showed him in the past on the animated show, and he tried to instill that in Aang, that no matter how serious life got, and no matter how much you had to deal with, you had to still find the fun in everything. So it felt less like he was trying to avoid things and more like trying to find his happiness when he could.
I think I would have connected with that better. Yeah, because it just bothers you. Like, I want to take you and like sit you down with someone and help you.
Yeah, because he absolutely is afraid of everything. Like he's afraid to move forward. He's afraid to grow in. Because the thing about it, that the reason why I gave him a pass with that is when he said that he didn't even trust his airbending abilities. He's like worried, like, okay, if I get more power, what is that going to cause? Like, yes, I can be the savior of these people. I need to be here. But if I gain this, what more destruction am I going to cause? Like, he's afraid to move forward. That's why each time, like, he's rather these other avatar incarnations to take over so that he doesn't have to deal with the ramifications of his actions. And it's a lot of fear. It's a whole lot of fear that he's dealing with.
And one thing that I do like about him is it does, I think, hit him that there's more than his overall goal that's at stake. Because as he's moving around from place to place, he's like, no, I need to help these people here right now. Like, yes, the Fire Lord is the big goal. And it kind of reminds me of how, like, we can be stressed about something big that's coming down the road. And at the same time, it's like, okay, yes, that is bad, but there's a lot of other things that I can fix, that I can get right, that I can do well.
Yeah.
And that's how it was when he went to the Omashu. He went to Omashu and helped. He helped in the village with the Kyoshi warriors. Like, he helped like all of those different places where he just stops, which is they do a lot more in the cartoon. It's a lot of episodic, like, pit stops along the way. It's not just the big cities. It's like, if it's a road trip, we're going to hit every exit, and we're also going to see the big ball of yarn, right? Like, that's more of what the cartoon is.
Yeah. And one of my favorite things is that even though they skipped all that stuff, they had the one scene where Zuko finds out that everybody already knows about the Avatar coming back. And you hear people in the background going like, oh, I heard that he saw some pirates. Well, I heard that he went into some canyon crawlers. Like, all of it was just references to episodes that they didn't do.
Yeah. I don't know. I could see that being frustrating, and at the same time, I kind of dug the length of this. I
get it.
So Keeden and we did an episode on Arrow, and then we did an episode on The Flash, both like season 1s, and we were like, oh my god, there's so many episodes on this. And we were like, why can't or Marvel's like, let's give you 6. And we were like, why can't there be like 8 to 10? And here we go. So I dig the level of detail they did, but I totally could see how having so much more detail in the animated series would be really nice, and also just give you more about these characters, which, granted, is probably why everybody loves it so much.
I think the one thing they really missed out on was the development of the relationship with Katara, Sokka, and Aang together. I think that they kind of rushed it into, and were like, all right, we're family now.
I agree. That was very quick. I agree with that. Yeah.
But what do you think about Sokka and Katara?
So Katara, I grew to really love near the end. So if I had to choose someone, outside of Zuko. I might go Katara. I liked, although I have to admit her abilities seem to move more quickly than feels natural. So I wonder if you had more of an going back to how many episodes, if you had more of that extension, it might feel less sudden there, because she's clearly working very hard on it, but it also seems very quick, like their relationship altogether. I agree with you. The family dynamic happens very quick, even though they're all kind of lost children. So it makes sense in some ways, but yeah, it did happen fast. So I really like Katara. Sokka, I like him. So I liked what they were doing with him, but I didn't think he got enough screen time for me to truly connect with him in the way that I think that I could. Because they definitely, and also it was interesting how they seem to be trying to mature his character, but also by making him fall in love with every single female around his age that he ever came across. Which, okay, he's a teenager. I get it. Okay,
it's
like,
not even just
Sokka gets all the girls.
He does.
He's written that way. That's how
and I totally figured, okay, he probably was not only written that way, but maybe written in a back in the a less
Sam's got some feeling.
Yeah, maybe a less ideal version of it. Like, I wonder if he was maybe more a ladies' man or not the best to the women in the past. Like, at least in these, it seems like he's really into the women in like a deeper way and gaining things from those relationships. But it is interesting where it's okay, all these women are just kind of used and cycled through to get him further along.
Yeah, he definitely he makes his way through. He definitely gets through all the books.
Oh my god.
He's a bender of a different sort, huh?
The backbender, right?
Oh my god. Oh my god. No, we didn't. If the original creators hear this, we're so sorry. So sorry.
They know what they did.
They know. They wrote it. They did this. They made him that way.
This was made for Kids My Ass. It was so violent. Come on.
Well,
this is way more violent.
This is another level. Like, yeah, this is way more violent than the cartoon. But at the same time, the cartoon had its moments.
It absolutely did. We hadn't even got there yet. But it's a push and pull. And I know that Colleen is about to reprimand me for saying this. I appreciate that Sokka in this is a little bit more tame than the Sokka we get throughout the animated series. The reason why the animated series had him so that way, because eventually he gets to be a mature adult that he has to be. But within this, they had to kind of do it with a little bit better tact, because this is the 2000s, and there's certain things that I don't know would, if he was the same level of Sokka that he was back then and in this show, I think that the purists would love it, but I think it may come off really like
too cringy,
too much in the context of how this show is already.
It's already kind of refrigerator trope a little bit.
I agree
because my whole thing with it is, I do think, like you said, Emilia, that each time he's getting these relationships, he's trying to find something a little bit deeper. It's not just like the attraction. Like he sees something in them that he feels like can make him stronger or better and grow him, which I like. I like that different approach to it. But again, purists will probably feel differently about it. As far as Katara, I think she's definitely a really dope character. I think the actress playing her, I think at first she was kind of little, but I think she starts to really let loose as the series progresses. I can't remember how long were each episode of the original anime series. Were they like 30 minutes?
22 minutes. It was a 30-minute show when it came on Nickelodeon. It was 8 minutes of commercials. So about 21, 22 minutes once you add in the opening credits that the old lady monologued in the first episode of the live action.
Which so this is the weird thing. The reason why I asked that is because, and Emilia, you brought it up, my wife, she she's like so excited for us to watch this. Like she's seen the first few episodes. She's like, watch it with me, watch it with me. So for her, it's the right amount of episodes. If we went and tried to go back through, even though they're small, like it'd be a lot. It's a stretch. And so I think that it being contained like this, even though some of the episodes have like 3 of the original episodes in one episode, I think that it's more digestible this way for just baseline consumers. But I do think what I've seen is that either one, people will hate it just because they want to hate it, or 2, they're like, let me go back and check the animated series. And they've been going back and forth, and it's been a good pivot, which is important because One Piece did the same exact thing. I haven't seen all of One Piece, but I sure enough watched that Netflix series, and I started watching One Piece out of nowhere. So
I did the same thing. We're gonna have to talk about One Piece at some point.
But anyway,
so Colleen, how do you feel about Sokka?
Well, Sam's right. I'm a little bit of a purist.
I know I'm about to get reprimanded. I knew it's coming.
No, it's okay. I understand what you mean, though. So
he pulled up a lightsaber to protect himself.
There you go.
No, I think that what Sam's talking about specifically is the Kyoshi warriors. So in the original show, Sokka came from a world where the men were in charge. They were the warriors. They took care of their village. So he was definitely a bit on the misogynistic side.
Yeah.
I mean, makes sense, yeah.
And when he first got to Kyoshi Island, all the girls beat the hell out of him. And he immediately got, they can't be women, they must be guys. But in the course of that episode, they kind of shift his view.
Yeah.
And to me, I get why that makes him a little bit less likable. But I also think it can be an important story to tell.
Yeah, I think that that's a fair point where, so clearly he's supposed to be a misogynistic character. And look, the fact of the matter is there are people out there that don't see us women as being capable of certain things. And that doesn't mean they're bad people. And just like with anything, if you don't get that exposure to different cultures and different ways of life, you get pigeonholed in your own area. And so, Colleen, I totally get that, where seeing more of a shift for him could have actually been really cool. Versus with this, ironically, in some ways, the story itself might be a little bit more misogynistic, even though his character isn't, because even though they don't die, it's kind of the refrigerator trope in terms of, here's one episode, you get this really cool female character, and then she's gone. And then you get this other really cool character, and then she's gone. And you're like, well, I want to know about those characters, but all you know is how they move his character forward. And so, ironically, it's it might have been better if they had gone a little bit with the original. I don't know.
Those two are laughing. These two are laughing because they have horrible poker faces.
I know, right?
So stay tuned, Emilia. Just stay. Stay tuned. Stay tuned.
Okay.
Yes.
So maybe I'll be less disappointed later.
Yeah.
I'm excited. Okay.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Give me the kick-ass women. I want to see it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Don't worry.
Yeah, there's some. Yeah, they're really cool. I will say, and you got to see a snippet of her early because this is something they changed too. In the animated series, you don't really see Zuko's sister Azula. You get to see her in this, and the way they introduced her was it was so good. But if you want to talk about badass females, she she's the like,
she might be the worst, although her dad's terrible, so
yeah,
she's one of the worst.
I think that Azula will really interest you as a therapist.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I completely agree with Colleen on that.
She's already fairly intriguing. And what's interesting too is she does not seem she seems like she might be lacking in some feelings and other things, and yet she has these friends there that I don't know. There seems to be a camaraderie and a loyal. They're trying to help her along in a way where I'm like, there's I'd be interested to see more of her. Yeah.
And so here's a question I have for you, Amelia, because I know that as a therapist, a lot of the time, like you approach each person separately because all of them have their
Yeah.
different issues. But um is there ever a time where, because I know they have things like family therapy where
Mm.
everyone comes in and gets seen at once, or couples therapy where like a couple will come in and get seen at once.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about Avatar is they're like a team. There's Sokka, there's Katara, there's Aang, and then of course there's going to be other characters they interact with. They interacted with Jet,
Mm.
they interact with all sorts of characters. I feel like all of these people need hugs and need their own thing. It's almost like I'm like, how would you even begin to approach?
Yeah. So one thing that I love that you're pointing out is there's a lot of times in less of a focus, and there's also it's hard to find as a resource, but less of a focus on family or couples or um, group is also a really great place where people coming together in one place to work on something all together can be really useful and helpful. And yeah, family dynamics are absolutely something that can be helpful. Let's take Zuko. Ideally, as terrifying as it would be as a therapist, having his dad there too would probably be the most helpful thing in terms of helping him with the things that are causing him the most issues. Because there really is that father son dynamic going on that's really a struggle. And his dad does seem to care about him if you pay close attention to his facial expressions and things. But there's a lot going on there. So especially when you're dealing with children, which is not my area of specialty, but when you're dealing with children or young adults, a lot of times it is helpful to incorporate family. And one of the tricky things can sometimes be we see it as, oh, it's a person problem, and looking at the family unit can be helpful and involving parents or other people in the family because we don't do things in a vacuum and we react to what's going on around us. And so it can definitely be helpful. Another thing, though, about these characters is they all come from very different cultures. So you're essentially in this. There's these almost like tribes or different communities, and they're smaller and more separated than say in the United States, or at least it seems that way. The way that they kind of go through things, and so that would also be something that I would be considering in terms of how I approach treatment with people. So, one of the intriguing things I find is okay, so how do airbenders go about things versus how do waterbenders go about things versus how do firebenders? And they seem to have these characteristics that loop in with the kind of bending that they do. And I wonder, how much of that is kind of trained into you because of what bending community you come from versus are some of these things more genetically ingrained somehow. And then also, what's the difference between being someone in the community who's a bender versus who's not? So Sokka versus Katara, for example. um, so there's a lot of, I think, really interesting cultural things that you would need to really delve into and immerse yourself into to know the best way to approach someone and how they need the treatment to happen. Because yeah, they all have trauma and things they could process through. But those nuances of just naturally how they think and feel and act about things, they show these very poignant differences between different towns or cities, or
Yeah,
I don't know what to call them, townships or whatever.
yeah.
Do you think you brought up with Zuko and his dad? Do you think you would add Azula there, or do you think you would have them separate,
Ooh.
like her with the dad, or have them all three there? Because I mean, there's absolutely some dissension that he's put on both of them against each other to get what
Yeah.
he wants, and whether or not he
Yeah.
used abuse or gaslighting or control, he could care less. because he's still going to get what he wants at the end of the day. He's playing mind
Right.
games with
Yeah.
children to mold them into being indoctrinated to his perspective. So I'm curious how you would even approach.
Yeah, so let's start there, which once again, I've worked with adults almost exclusively, so those of you that are more child and family, please feel free to correct me. So first and foremost, this guy would be reported to Child Protective Services because he is an abusive parent. He is I mean, first off, he sends off a 15-year-old into the world on their own without I mean, I guess he's got IRO there, so you could argue that there's some guardianship happening or something. But if that guy wasn't king and it was more how we do things in the United States, Child Protective Services would probably be involved because the father's, yeah, he's I mean, he literally scarred his son. So I'm sure Keeden and Colleen, if this kid came across your classroom, you'd be reporting something, or the therapist would be, or whatever. So there would definitely be some involvement of additional just safety features. And so therapy can't really happen where there's not safety. So that would lend some really tricky factors here. If there wasn't that risk for the safety, I think it would be a little bit of an easier thing where having them all together in one room and talking these things out. So let's say you take out the avatariness of everything and how do you make sure that there's safety first? And then from there, ideally, yeah, they're all coming in together because it's all playing off of each other. And you've got essentially two kids pitted against one another. The dad has some very clear ideas of what his kids need to be, and it's not necessarily healthy for them. Hopefully you could come to a different way of going about things where, hey, is there a different way to parent where you may actually get better results than what you're looking for? But it's really tricky when you have someone who literally wants someone to lead a war effort and be violent in the way that they do it. He doesn't want someone that shows a lot of mercy. So that would honestly be super tricky in therapy. And I would be very interested to hear from my child and family therapy folks and marriage and family folks about how they would go about this. Because honestly, it'd probably be a super, super tricky family to work with.
Yeah, and I feel like it's one of those things where too this is once again a show about child soldiers because
yeah, you're right, Keeden.
I know.
Yep.
I love it. I know it's a lot of.
It's the hero's journey, guys.
I mean, yeah, hero's journey, yeah, but like also like Harry Potter, Hunger Games, Maze Runner, Power Rangers,
Captain Planet,
right? Like all of them. It's just like
every Robin ever.
Oh gosh, yes.
That's how we started that whole child soldier conversation.
Yes. Yeah, and so and this is just another example of kids being thrust into the most adult roles way ahead of time, right? Because instead of them dealing like Aang should be struggling through middle school,
right?
Yeah,
right.
And so actually, when people become adults and they essentially had to be an adult as a child, you actually, a lot of times these folks can really struggle with letting go control, being able to essentially keep from paying attention and trying to keep everything well managed, and they're always looking for the chaos that needs to be dampened because they were so used to it from a young age where really they should have been taken care of. It can be very hard becoming an adult and not having been able to truly be a child. And so a lot of times you'll hear from these folks like they're caretaking all their friends, and it's hard to turn off. It's hard to loosen these things, and you can hold a lot of stress and strain because of all of that from childhood.
Yeah, and honestly, almost all these characters do that.
Oh yeah.
They're all forced to be adults.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you you also get a chance to pretty much see all of their trauma. Is it the Co episode where you basically see them
God, that was rough.
reliving all of the worst parts
Oh, right.
of
Yeah.
their life, which also shout out to George Takai.
Every time he was on the
Oh my
screen,
god.
Keeden's just, I hate Co.
this. I hate this. Like, it's like, hey, what if we made a centipede creepier? It's like, Jesus Christ. Like, come on, man. Like,
come on over to Texas, Keeden. I can show you a centipede in real life.
Yeah. No, I'll stick to the zoo. Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah. He was telling me, like, yeah, she got stung by a scorpion. I'm like, okay, thanks.
I know. I listen to your podcast.
Oh, that's
You got stung by a scorpion? Oh my god! I'm sorry.
I stepped on it in my kitchen.
Gosh, down. That's terrible.
I know.
Now I'm trying to remember.
Come visit.
Did that episode come out yet? Or is it just because I always hear you from the other room, one side of the podcast?
Maybe.
So I know we need to wrap up.
Yes.
I would love to know what kind of bender each of us would be.
I'm not.
I know.
You know what kind of bender you're gonna be, bro. Just go
Probably,
ahead and keep it a stack.
All right, fine. I would probably be a firebender.
We're all nodding vigorously.
But at the same time, are we talking about like what kind of bender we would be, or just which character do we most relate to? Because
Porque no los dos.
Okay, right. I get it. I get what this is not what I signed up. But
it's
yeah,
okay,
I think
Keeden. Someone's got to be the firebender. And remember, didn't Aang have a firebender friend 100 years back?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, we're not trying to psychoanalyze you or anything, Keeden.
It's all right, you're Slytherin too, we know.
More of a Ravenclaw. Okay. All right, go ahead.
I'm a waterbender.
Yeah.
Waterbender. Guitar. Okay.
I'm an earthbender, I think.
Oh, me too.
Okay.
I think I'm Earth. Yeah. All right, we got a good blend. Yeah. I'm not easygoing enough for air.
We'll get there. There's an earthbender you're gonna meet later on, Emilia. And yeah, you're an earthbender. You're one.
I thought so.
Everyone loves her.
You're an earthbender.
Yes.
I'm excited. I actually am looking forward to season 2. Once again, I think the character development and everything is great. I'm looking forward to Aang actually getting to a point where he focuses. I know it might not be season 2, but getting to a point where he can finally overcome some of the stuff and start mastering things.
You know what?
Who knows?
The original show was 3. The original cartoon was 3 seasons. I have a feeling this show is going to run for 4. 4 to 5. I'm going to say 4 to 5 just because there's something in the books are named after the different elements that Aang has to learn. So season 1 of Avatar: The Last Airbender is called water. It's called water because he learns to waterbend throughout the whole season, which is something they did not do.
So weird.
This first season. It was one of the things that irked Colleen a bit.
That's what was annoying me. He wasn't mastering anything that whole time.
He was supposed to be learning with Katara.
Yeah, it's really weird.
I complained about that.
Because he gave her what she needed to kind of let loose and be natural in her forms, but he was so dealing with fear that he didn't even attempt. Like, he tried to project it on other people to do it, even down to letting Katara fight certain battles when part of my head would have been like, man, if I would have known how to do that, I could have helped her. But
he's young.
He's
young.
a kid. Yeah, he really is.
We'll give it to him.
Yeah. And so I think I'm really, really glad that you liked it, Emilia. And do you think you're gonna wait for the live action to come out, or do you think you're gonna go watch the cartoon now?
So I'm that annoying person who, if I'm not careful and I don't watch something quickly enough, I'll look it up on Wiki. So I might have to watch it just so I don't
for yourself.
Just Yeah,
We will.
spoil
Yeah,
it
well-
some other way.
Excellent. You heard it here, Bat Therapy.
Do
We're
it.
not done with Avatar. This is going to be a
Woohoo.
whole season. Avatar.
Wait, hold on.
And check out our Patreon, because eventually we got to do a
Yes.
bat screening where we watch Those That Shall Not Be Named movie.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Movie?
And shout out. We do have one person currently subscribing to our Patreon. Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We really
I
appreciate it.
appreciate you.
So I got a
But-
question though before we
Okay.
wrap things up, and this is a trigger question, but I want to know, Colleen, I'm asking you specifically.
Oh,
Does
Alright.
this series, for you, do you want a second season of it?
I think yes. I mean, if nothing else, just to see Toph. I want to see what they do. But I think they did well enough. They've got an audience that could, like Emilia, bring them back to the original. I think they did good enough that I want to see what they're going to do. Yeah, I would like to see it. I'm
I
not.
heard it here. They did good enough.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Dearest.
I think the
Dearest.
reason,
I am. I
Dearest.
warned him of that. He
right.
knows this. He's seen me watch the Harry Potter movies. He knew what he was getting in.
She has like an eye twitch thing.
I cannot help but just be like, well, in the books, they did blah, 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 blah.
Yeah,
Apparently there's someone
Yeah.
named Peeves in the Harry Potter books.
Oh my
I don't
god.
know. I don't know. Whatever.
All
I
right.
don't
Well,
know.
we don't
Yeah.
have time to go into
All
Harry
right.
Potter right
But
now.
yeah, right. Absolutely. But
Yeah.
Another episode.
of course, you all know that I am also a part of Team JVS with my good friend Sam here. Sam, do you want to plug the channel?
Yeah, sure. You guys can find me specifically on all social medias at SuperSEL0320. But as far as JVS, you can go to YouTube, type in Team JVS. We're everywhere. We're on TikTok. Our TikTok is booming up. We're doing reactions again. We're putting reactions back on TikTok. We've got a lot of movie reviews. We're going through a lot of freaking shows. One show right now that we're covering, which is phenomenal. Hopefully you guys go and check it out. It's called Shogun. That's on FX
Shogun,
right now.
yes.
And
That
it
looks
is
good.
one of the best. We're going to go through every single episode in depth. And I mean, another show's coming back called Invincible, and we're definitely going to be covering that too. So
I've heard
there's a
of
lot
that.
of things coming.
I've heard of that one. I've heard
Yeah.
of that one.
Thank you guys.
We
for
already
having
did a
me.
collab on that one if you haven't caught that.
And we're
so
gonna-
definitely watch that.
And I think we're probably going to do another collab for that second half of the season. But yes, thank you so much, Sam, for joining us again. Colleen, thank you
You're
for
welcome.
joining us. And yeah, it was, I think everyone should check this show out. I pray that it gets a second season. It's getting enough views right now. The numbers
Yeah.
are in its favor.
Hit a really low bar for live action.
They did. From what I hear, I've never seen it, but I will soon.
Oh my god.
I'm excited.
Yeah,
Yes.
I just think people honestly were fearful that this was gonna fail to begin with because the original creators were connected to it and then they bowed out.
Mhm.
And I think
Yeah.
that I mean, you can feel their touch in here, and of course they're gonna be working their own project, which I'm excited to see. But I don't think that's a right to already judge this based on that. And I don't know. A lot of the complaints I'm seeing, it's just, I don't know. I think it's just unnecessary. Like that other movie that we will not name, you cannot tell me ever in life. I will debate you to the ground that this is worse than that. No, I'm sorry. This is
Oh, no.
very
Nobody
entertaining.
would
I
say
absolutely want to. No, some
Just
people are
Appa
saying that.
alone.
Online people
I
are
had a
legitimately
friend-
saying that.
I had
People
a
will say
friend
whatever they want online.
that said that as soon as they saw Appa, they were happier with this version of the show.
Amelia,
Then the
please
last
just
one.
go look up Appa from the
no.
movie.
Okay. I'll do that later.
Oh god.
It's a weird leg thing.
It's terrifying.
Yeah,
Oh
it's
no.
yeah, it's bizarre. But yes, thank you so much, Sam, for taking time out. Colleen, thank you so much for coming on our show. And
Thank you.
and yeah, we're gonna go watch some probably cartoon Avatar now.
Let's go. Thanks for nerding out with us. I'm clinical psychologist Dr. Emilia Brown.
And I'm educator and comic aficionado Keeden Hopkins. Check out my TV and movie reviews on YouTube at Team JVS. Check out our website at bat-therapy.com, our Bat Therapy YouTube channel, and follow us on social media. And don't forget our Patreon page at patreon.com/battherapy. See you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.